first and foremost, it's hard not to think about the timeline of events here. We're essentially seeing that Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, or at least its attempt, is now in its third year. What's your assessment of what's happening in the ground at this stage?
It seems that we are approaching the darkest hours of these 2 years. That would be the moment for European allies, especially to consolidate the support and actually put the teeth where their mouths are. And I think if we look back to the history, then before things start to get better, they usually get worse. So probably in this next 4 to 6 months, 4 to 6 weeks, we are in the position where this U-turn needs to happen. And it clearly means that there are actually zero scenarios where we can depict the transatlantic security without increasing of defense expenditure, attributing more importance to defense readiness, buying more ammunition, weapons, and sending out the message that we stand firm for European and transatlantic security and prosperity.
You're saying the turning point needs to happen in 4 to 6 weeks. That's quite soon. What do you need to see apart from higher defense spending to make that change on the ground?
I think there is a, full 360 degrees of words that have been provided to Ukraine. Now it's time to actually put up more ammunition. We all recognize that the manufacturing level of the defense industry is not there yet, but we have in our horizon that probably by the second half the manufacturing capabilities will be ramped up, and in order for this to continue, we just need to put more contracts on the table. In Estonia, we have increased our defense expenditure for 3.2%. We are continuing the very aggressive military support to Ukraine, and we are just breaking new records as the percentage of GDP. And we hope that all the others will do the same. What we have actually calculated that if the Ramstein coalition, the whole 51 nations who have been supporting Ukraine, would allocate 0.25% of their GDP annually, then Ukraine would win. And this is something that actually sounds fairly reasonable and affordable.
Speaking of ammunition, I saw you at Munich Security Conference. I was also there, and when we heard from the Danish Prime Minister speaking on stage, she was saying that when it comes to ammunition, the problem is not production, that there's quite a lot in Europe. The problem is willingness to send all of the available ammunition to Ukraine. Do you agree with her assessment?
Well, not entirely. The manufacturing is also an issue. If it wasn't an issue, then we wouldn't need to have this interview here. Then Ukraine would have won the war already, and we would live in peace and security. And clearly, that's an issue. I think compared to 2021, before the war, the manufacturing has already been ramped up 3 times or even 4 times. So it's actually a massive increase. But I think it's more of a manifest of the low levels before the war rather than the required levels now, because we are still many times lower than Russia. Plus, Russia gets ample supplies from North Korea and also Iran.
We're also seeing quite a lot of shipments from North Korea in this context to Russia. My point is, what do you need to step up production? Why are you not managing to do this?
Well, I think we are actually on track to get there. We have calculated. But
quite slowly.
Well, clearly it's too slow also for our appetite. But I mean, these are the cards we are playing with. The current prognosis is that by the early 2025, Ukraine should get to the level of actually attributing or imposing attrition to Russians, and for that they need around 200,000 artillery rounds a month. We are not there yet as Europe and US on combined manufacturing, but we should get there easily by the early 2025. Of course, this means that this year will be very rough for Ukrainians, and they need to assume into strategic defense, and they just need to hold on.
I would also like to get your thoughts on the level of threat that Russia poses to NATO. Recently, your Prime Minister was saying that you stopped a Russian-directed influence operation on your territory. Just talk to us about how much of an imminent threat Russia poses to you.
Well, we are fairly confident on that, and the way we say it is that we have no imminent military threat from Russia to Estonia or to NATO. But clearly, if we would take the imminent and military away, then this sentence would become nonsense. As long as Ukrainian forces are grinding Russians in Ukraine, this is something that will push the potential military threat for Estonia and for whole NATO to the right. But as long as it stops, if there will be an unjust peace treaty, then the clock starts ticking, and then the only measuring yardstick is the ability to reconstitute, and not only from Russian side, because I think we are all seeing their ability to do that and their manufacturing levels. It's rather the question to ourselves, how fast and how self-confidently can we put our vision to the force.
It's interesting you say that, because recently President Zelensky said that European nations are not ready for a potential attack from Russia simply because you have not been communicating that message to your populations. Are you ready for a potential attack from Russia, and are you telling your population that they need to be ready for this?
Well, we in Estonia are ready. I mean, the way we define our mission here in the Ministry of Defense is we are preparing for a war. Clearly, it doesn't mean that the war will imminently come. It means that the only way to prepare is to be ready for that. Our ammunition, weapon procurements, our willingness to defend among society are at historic peaks. The amount of soldiers we call for refreshment training is also at historic peak. Actually, last year we called in around 30,000 reservists. That is around 8.5% of the age group of men from 20 to 60. So that's a fairly large number, especially if you translate it into the UK or US.
I would also like to get your thoughts on these comments from US lawmakers about a potential nuclear war in space. Tell us what sort of information you have about this, and how big of a concern is it?
Well, I don't really have more information that I think that you have been reporting there, but I think everything that concerns nuclear is something that needs to be taken seriously.
And also in space. I mean, is this a real threat that actually Russia's next point of tension really might not be on Earth, but more on space?
Well, Russia is continuously demonstrating that they are not only fighting the war in the trenches of Avdiivka, but they have opened up fronts in space, in economic, diplomatic, information sphere, doing it everywhere, and their metrics are not only the military success, but also the food prices, inflation, energy prices, and whatever confusion and disparities they can sow around the world.
I just have one final question, Mr. Salm. When it comes to some of what can happen next, some of your officials have suggested that Russia is prepared to double the amount of troops that they have in the border with Estonia and other NATO countries in the next couple of years. We're seeing Germany sending permanent troops now to Lithuania. Is this an exercise that needs to be replicated by other NATO countries?
Well, what I see actually from the leadership of NATO, our closest allies here in Estonia, that are the Brits, Americans, and Frenchmen, the problem attribution is very clear and sober. Everyone understands the level of threat and understands clearly what needs to be done. And what needs to be done is very simple. We need to have plans in place. We need to exercise them. We need to communicate out that we are ready. And our resolve is to, well, wipe you off the earth if you would even dare to think of challenging NATO.